According to Westpac Rescue Helicopter General Manager Richard Jones, people in northern New South Wales need rescuing from Sydney-based CareFlight and its telemarketing campaign.
If people know who they're supporting, I'm comfortable with that, but it's the misleading nature of the telemarketing phone calls who just think that they're supporting the helicopter, and as you know, in the local region, it's the Westpac helicopter that they think they're supporting, but in fact it's not.
While it's not illegal for CareFlight to seek donations from the Hunter and New England regions, the two groups have an agreement not to tread on each other's fundraising patch. But Westpac says it continues to receive complaints from its supporters who have mistakenly donated to the Sydney-based service.
Again, if people know who they're supporting, that's fine, but it's not the Westpac helicopter that they are supporting. We do not telemarket.
CareFlight denies it's been cold calling in the Hunter in recent weeks, but says it has phoned people who have made previous donations.
I sent an email off again yesterday to their CEO. He said that he'll investigate it, but he offered me and the community of this region an unequivocal apology only 3.5 to 4 weeks ago, and that apology is seen to be not worth much.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It was a night of big decisions for Newcastle City councillors. The second stage of Energy Australia Stadium's Western Grandstand redevelopment was approved. The $12 million project will see an extra 2,097 seats and better facilities for away teams built.
This would be done, I believe, before Christmas, so we'll have a good facility there, and we'll have a finished facility which will be an internationally scale and quality.
A plan for Dixon Park was also approved. Picnic and barbecue shelters, landscaping and pathways will be built there. Councillors, however, rejected a proposal for a 32-metre high office building on the NIB site in Hunter Street.
The height and the amount of height over and above the limit was one compelling factor in council rejecting it.
Developer Jeff McCloy is now expected to walk away from the project.
I understand what he'll probably do is refurbish what's there and sell it on or let it.
Greens councillor Cassandra Arnold's resigned during the meeting, citing ill health. She said as council had gone into caretaker mode, she didn't feel she's let the community down. With local government elections around 6 weeks away, a by-election won't be held to replace her. And the rotunda at King Edward Park is under wraps as $15,000 worth of repair work is carried out. The shelter was vandalised last month. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's very important that we regard this simply as a proposal. It has not been approved yet, and Hunter Water and the state government have continually presented this to us as a fait accompli.
The No Tilliger Dam group formed in the days after the state government's shock announcement. A mix of residents, environmentalists and locals, they're determined to stop the dam going ahead.
There is major trauma in the community to do with this. We will be losing 3,000 hectares of farmland, which seems so crazy in a time when we are in the middle of a world food crisis.
Tom Borer is as local as you get, a stalwart of Dungog.
I passionately believe that it will destroy Dungog as a community, and that's why I'm vehemently opposed to the dam.
The group has protested throughout the Hunter and even taken their message to Sydney.
It is not necessary. We oppose it on the grounds of cost. We say it's too risky, and we also say there is too much to lose.
One thing they say we can't ignore is the concerns of geologist Graham Holt, who's worried about a number of fault lines in the area, describing them as textbook problems.
It runs straight down through here, through the bottom of the creek, just immediately in front of these rocks, then back up and straight up the hill to the south of those trees.
So this area is riddled with faults?
Oh yes, it's a complex area. It always was complex geology, and there are faults literally everywhere.
He's not a member of the group but was asked by a local to examine the area.
I've really got a professional duty to say, hey, there's a problem here.
However, Hunter Water refutes his claims.
We haven't identified anything at this point in time as part of our investigations that would suggest that a safe dam can't be constructed at the site.
Tomorrow, what effect would the dam have downstream in Dungog Shire?
Seventeen and a half thousand people die from cardiovascular disease each year in New South Wales alone, and only 4% of all cardiac arrest victims, or people whose hearts stop beating, will survive. Today's visit to the Lewis household was just a friendly follow-up, but recently these officers responded to the same Cessnock address where 62-year-old Lorraine suffered a cardiac arrest.
Just before it happened, I was talking to her all fine, and she was sort of mid-sentence when it happened, so yeah, very quickly.
And I'll tell you what, 4 minutes is a long time. That's when the ambulance lobbed here and they took over from there.
Paramedics Lee McClellan, Rick Romain and Steve Prince shocked Lorraine 8 times with a defibrillator before she responded. But it was husband Norm and grandson Josh who initially kept her alive by doing CPR.
I knew that Norman knew CPR because he did first aid when he worked in the mines, but I didn't think he'd ever have to do it on me.
Lorraine's survival coincides with new teaching from the ambulance service that is moving away from the need for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
We really are encouraging people to do just the cardiac compressions if they see someone collapsed and with no pulse and no breathing. Just to do cardiac compressions at a rate of about 30 a minute is enough to sustain life until we can get on scene.
Thankfully, Lorraine's family knew what to do.
This is such a wonderful story. It's a story of survival. The family have their mother, their grandmother, their wife, and she's well.
I realised that if they weren't here, I would be dead.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Knights emerged from their new dressing shed in the Western Grandstand this afternoon, and while the stadium is far from finished, at least the essentials are in place.
The showers work. Yeah, it's just, as a modern age shed, it's just right at the top of the tree. So there's not going to be another one built down there, and the old away sheds will probably still stand for the away teams maybe.
That will be challenge number 1 for the Bunnies. They'll then have to contend with the Newcastle side, which is likely to get back its captain after a 3-game layoff through a knee injury. Steve Simpson and Jared Mullen took things easier, but remain in the mix.
This is a must-win game for us. We need to probably win 3 out of our next 4, or at least these next 2 home games. So, so it all starts on Sunday.
For the man known as the Fijian Flyer, though, it all started last weekend against the Sharks.
Just being patient the whole time. Because I know I was going to be there sooner or later.
The softly spoken 20-year-old is certainly being heard, with the club recently extending his contract. And for the short term at least, the objective is simple enough.
I want to improve this year and play more first grade, and probably next year probably play more.
Adam McGilrick, NBN News.
Obviously, there is a bit of red tape involved in that, and we're getting through that. But having said that, as you know, he's not signed, sealed and delivered as yet.
We'll definitely look at Jasper in this weekend's game and hope to take him away to Port Macquarie for next week, and then look at him again against Melbourne.
was destined for Coffs Harbour. There seems to be some doubt over that now, and so local businesses, local surf club people, locals in general feel that we should at least bid.
With the truck flipped upside down and the cab twisted and crushed, the driver was trapped inside the wreckage. Clinging to life, ambulance officers attempted to treat the 51-year-old, but he died at the scene. The semi-trailer ran off the road just after 9:30 this morning, about 2 kilometres south of Bulahdelah.
We're looking at a northbound vehicle negotiating a right-hand bend which leads onto a straight section of roadway. So the accident site is actually at the apex of the bend.
Travelling from the Central Coast, the trailer was loaded with large concrete culverts to be used on the Pacific Highway upgrade. They were scattered several metres behind the truck. Crash investigation police from Port Macquarie were trying to find the cause and piece together the deadly chain of events.
This stretch of the road is now down to 80 kilometres an hour. It's subject to numerous roadworks, both north and south of this location. At this stage we can gather the road was wet, there had been some rain.
For some of those on scene, it was a chilling reminder of one of the worst crashes on the Pacific Highway in recent years. In 2004, on this same stretch of highway, less than a kilometre from where we're standing, a truck crossed to the wrong side of the road, killing grandmother Barbara Cheadle and her 2 darling granddaughters, Jessica and Rebecca Campbell. A dual carriageway is currently being built to bypass Bulahdelah and this deadly section of the Pacific Highway. Northbound traffic was delayed for several hours, with one lane closed and alternating traffic flow in place. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Thousands of new homes are being built in housing estates across Maryland, Fletcher and Minmi. But there's just one Hunter Valley bus route for the area and it doesn't even run through to Newcastle, instead finishing at Wallsend.
I think it's atrocious. I really think it has to be improved. That area has been going since the 1970s and basically it has a village bus service.
The transport shortage is so bad, the Newcastle Community Transport Group has now started its own fortnightly minibus service to help elderly and disabled people get to the nearby Jesmond shopping centre.
We just felt that area again was isolated and the people out there really don't have much access to shopping centres.
The group is circulating a petition calling on the member for Wallsend to raise the matter with the Minister for Transport. But Sonia Hornery says rather than getting more buses in the area, she thinks connectivity between services should be improved.
I'd love to see public buses run all over the city, including the outer suburbs, but let's work on what's feasible and make it the best we can.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Over the last decade, the number of people flying in and out of regional airports has grown from 6 million to 16 million. But while the big city routes are making money, flights to smaller towns are struggling to survive. One that's under threat is Aeropelican's new service between Newcastle and Tamworth, which is yet to turn a profit after 5 months.
To break even on that service, we need at least 9 or 10 passengers each way on every service, and unfortunately we haven't achieved that. In fact, we've had numbers as low as 3 and 4.
Overall, though, the industry continues to grow, and high school students were given a taste of aviation careers at Newcastle Airport today. From life as cabin crew to the art of flying helicopters, the day gave 120 youngsters some career choices to consider.
Today's opened up a lot of options for me. There's more than just being a pilot.
Yeah, it's been great. I've learnt so much already.
A shortage of skilled engineers, a shortage of skilled pilots. So bringing them on young, getting them interested and getting them trained is a major step forward for the industry.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Moore's fourth-generation dairy farm is one of the many prime pieces of agricultural land that could become the floor of Tilligra Dam. Jim's handed the property over to his son, who milks up to 100 head every day.
This old homestead was originally an old guest house. It's been a post office, a telephone exchange, a meeting place. It was very old, yeah.
Back in 2006, NBN News caught up with the Moores in the days after the announcement. 18 months on, the family is still reeling.
You've had something for a lifetime, you've got a lifetime of memories here. It's irreplaceable. They just don't make this sort of country anymore, you know.
Someone's going to have to pay for this dam, and in the long run it'll be the users of the water, yeah.
The loss of the local farming community is expected to have a big impact down the road in Dungog. It's been calculated the Shire's building industry is already losing $800,000 a year.
That may not sound like a lot in a place like Newcastle, but in an area like Dungog that's a significant effect.
Council is watching every dollar closely. It anticipates losing $80,000 in rates from the more than 50 families leaving the valley. But General Manager Craig Deasy is more concerned about the social impacts on schools, businesses and community groups.
But to be quite honest, the last 18 months has been pure hell.
Council's resources have been stretched, not just from wading through the paperwork.
I look at it and what it's done to our community to date, and I've seen a lot of negative impact. But if it's going to go ahead, well, Council has to be on the front foot and endeavour to achieve the best outcomes possible for our community.
That means securing money for improving roads to deal with the strain during a lengthy construction period. Also, 18 kilometres of Salisbury Road needs to be diverted, with Council to eventually take responsibility once Hunter Water hands the site back over.
And the major relocation of Salisbury Road is likely to commence around the middle of 2010.
Ironically, the Rural Fire Service will also have to be relocated. Its current headquarters will be 80 metres underwater. Tomorrow, in our final instalment, we look at the future for the region if the dam goes ahead. Will tourists flock to a man-made lake?
No Joel Griffiths, but Danish recruit Jasper Hawkinson was doing plenty to impress his prospective teammates.
Neat and tidy, they've always got good mentality, the Scandinavian players, so we'll play this weekend, stay with us next week at Port Macquarie and we'll make a decision.
After another turbulent off-season, the Jets squad is finally beginning to take shape, with Adam Griffiths returning to the lineup alongside impressive recruits Antun Kovacic and Jason Nidovsky. The coach is looking forward to the fight for spots in the starting 11.
People like Joe Wheelhouse, for example, he's really put his hand up and he's done well. I mean, Adam DePuzzo probably became a bit more of a regular from last year, but again, he's another one.
But the frustration of preparing without representative players such as Jade North is clearly weighing heavily on the premiership-winning coach. Gary Van Egmond says he fully supports our national teams, but from now on he'll insist his players be left at home unless it's an official FIFA-sanctioned event.
We can't just have players going out on camps here and there when we also obviously have the integrity of the A-League to ensure.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. It's a world away from the French Alps, but Scott Barrett was as keen as ever to get back into some familiar airspace. He says the warm winds in Europe at this time of year provided a spectacular challenge.
It's summertime and there's snow on the mountains and we're flying up along these very steep rocky faces.
On day one of the World Championship event, at one point Barrett was 20 minutes behind the main pack. But after reaching speeds of more than 100 kilometres an hour, he finished 21 minutes in front.
Had a very convincing first day, and so winning from then on was just about minimising mistakes.
The 33-year-old will now focus on events closer to home. He says the Hunters beaches, lakes and mountains provide the perfect environment to practice.
In previous years I've set a record of flying out of the Hunter Valley and to Nyngan, 340 kilometres away. It's just spectacular things to do here in the Hunter. It's great for flying.
Even on days like this. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Police say between 10 and 15 people broke into Maitland High School just after 10 o'clock last night.
They've smashed their way into the school through a window. They've then ransacked and vandalised well over 25 classrooms, storerooms, the main office. They've vandalised artworks in the main foyer.
The school's principal wouldn't allow us inside the campus.
The damage was to office areas of the school, and it appears that the intruders were seeking items that they could sell or money. There was no malicious damage.
Police are also investigating a break-in and vandal attack on this villa in Kurri Kurri. Sometime in the past few days, thieves clogged the bathtub and left it to overflow, flooding the house.
Now, 7 rooms have been damaged by the water through the carpet and the floors, and they may need to be replaced. Also, a brand new dishwasher that had been installed was disconnected and stolen from that unit.
They also smeared faeces on a wall. The crime wasn't discovered until late yesterday, and police want to hear from anyone who witnessed either incident. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The Hunter's economy is slowing down. In its latest economic snapshot, the Hunter Valley Research Foundation has found consumer confidence has taken a battering, and in turn we're spending less.
We know residential building approvals and new motor vehicle registrations as indicators of consumer spending are both pretty weak. Businesses are likewise starting to feel the effects of an economic slowdown.
However, it's yet to hit the labour market, with unemployment hovering around 5%, and 11,000 more people in the region are in jobs than this time 12 months ago. But businesses are beginning to take short-term measures to try to ride out the downturn by cutting overtime.
If things don't pick up, that's a precursor to perhaps higher unemployment rates and weaker employment toward the end of this year.
The Hunters' results reflecting a nationwide slump.
I think people can take some comfort in knowing that, in fact, no, this is a wider change which is going through the economy, and like all things in the economy, it's a cycle.
A cycle dependent on global happenings.
Next 6 months, pretty much more of the same, I suspect. The good news is petrol prices, if anything, will be lower, and interest rates almost certainly aren't going up anymore.
Penny Evans, NBN News. Dungog boomed during the construction of Chichester Dam back in the early 1900s. It's predicted the town could face the same experience again if Tilligra goes ahead.
The town flourished, and then when the construction phase was over, the whole thing fell in a heap. And it's only in the last few years that that section of Dungog has got over all that disruption of nigh on 100 years ago.
To be honest, I'd say that we're in a lull now. We're going to have a peak and we're going to go back again.
Craig Deasy believes Hunter Water should have the same responsibility to the Shire as coal mines in the Upper Hunter, which fund infrastructure like sporting fields and parks.
They're also required to contribute to the community. I believe that there should be a community benefit fund established.
The community reference group set up to liaise between Hunter Water and the town has been focusing on the future.
To be honest, it's been one of the toughest jobs that I've had to do, but I mean, to see the effort that the community people have put in, unpaid, that has been one of the key things that I've drawn from this.
It's helping local businesses band together to develop an eco-tourism industry around the dam site, linking in with the national park.
But that obviously takes time, takes money, takes infrastructure, takes support from government. So it's something that is probably too big for this area to handle on its own.
A forum will be held next month, bringing tourism experts and people from other towns affected by dams to Dungog to share their experiences.
The community of Dungog isn't looking for a handout in any of this. We see the dam as something that's probably going to happen and that we're going to have to manage, and we have to rise to the challenge of dealing with it.
And while there's scepticism around the Shire whether the dam is being built just for the region,
it's not people losing their homes here for the sake of people in Borkham Hills.
No, certainly not. What we see is that the construction of Tilligra Dam will certainly benefit our existing and future customers of the Hunter and the Lower Hunter region.
The Mayor sees the bigger picture.
When you have a look at the benefits for the Hunter region and the Central Coast, I mean, I'm not in a position to dispute that.
Councillor Wall believes there's enormous potential for the area to benefit once the proposal's future is known.
We're in a holding pattern until a determination's made, and I think the whole community is sort of just standing back and waiting for that time.
Brian Smith rarely leaves much to chance, but he's never researched referees before, until now.
We've actually done our homework on Ben Cummins, the referee this week. He's the leading penalty giver for not being square at marker.
They've practised for it and most other problems, given their much publicised statistics showing Newcastle give away the most and receive the least penalties, a point not lost on the skipper.
We want to be as squeaky clean as we can in that area. You know, it's just up to us as a group and as an individual as well to do your part in the discipline part.
Both Badiris and Adam McDougall look sure things to play Souths on Sunday. Steve Simpson and Jared Mullen will be given until game day after missing today's session. And while stopping short of ruling Danny Wicks out, the coach admits he'll battle an ankle problem for the rest of the season.
It's really a matter of pain and tolerance to that and what he's able to do on a week-by-week basis from here on in.
As for the wider frustrations of fellow coaches at present, Smith can only sympathise.
Unless the body that is in control is actually doing something about the things that we're not allowed to say about each other, then it's allowed to continue.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Club chairman Con Constantine presented those already on the playing roster with their playing strips for the season today. Football Federation CEO Ben Buckley was there, but even he can't clear Jasper Hawkinson to play tomorrow night without the right paperwork. The owner and CEO, though, to soon meet about the club's A-League licence.
Talk to them about areas that we think they've done particularly well in and areas where we think they need some further investments.
The FFA is reviewing all current licences, which don't expire for another 2 seasons, but winning the title doesn't guarantee the Jets an existence beyond that.
Well, nothing's a fait accompli, but I think all of the 8 existing clubs have done a fantastic job.
Salary cap and the use of controversial third-party sponsorships to help sign players may be on the agenda as well. Newcastle doesn't employ the service agreements.
They've put some good arguments to us why we should consider changing it. We won't be changing it for this season.
I refuse to lose. That's it. Full stop.
No, the RAF hasn't changed its uniform, and no, it's not trying to save fuel on the tarmac. Instead, this is fundraising Air Force style. Personnel at RAF Base Williamtown spent the day muscling an FA-18 Hornet over a 100-metre course. 14 teams took part in the tug-of-war. The hardest part was to get the 17-ton fighter jet moving, but with a little momentum and the military's can-do attitude, most teams were able to pull the aircraft over the line in around a minute. Not everyone could go the distance, but when it's a good cause, stopping is not an option.
Yeah, they just went straight over me.
The day raised $6,500 for the Cystic Fibrosis Clinic at Newcastle's John Hunter Children's Hospital.
One of the guys at our work is a sufferer, and we just started with a little seed, and next thing we knew, we've got a hornet teed up, and we're wanting to raise awareness for CF, cystic fibrosis.
CF patient Aaron Matthews was on hand to witness the feats of human strength. He's one of hundreds of people who'll benefit from the money raised. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's the first time breast cancer trials have been conducted specifically for older women. Called IBIS-2 and later, the studies are testing a new generation of drug called aromatase on thousands of women at risk of developing the cancer.
We want to prevent women from getting breast cancer. We know we can do it with an old drug called tamoxifen, but our treatment trials tell us a new drug called anastrozole is better than tamoxifen.
10,000 postmenopausal women from across the globe are taking part in IBIS-2, which aims to stop breast cancer from ever developing, while 2,500 women who have all previously had the disease and are at risk from it returning are involved with the later trial. Doctors hope aromatase will help both groups avoid cancer.
Postmenopausal women still make a lot of estrogen, and these drugs switch that estrogen production off so that if there's a tendency for breast cancer which needs estrogen to feed it for the growth of the tumour cells, that gets blocked.
If successful, the results could be staggering.
We could theoretically prevent 600,000 women a year from getting breast cancer in the first place. These are postmenopausal women at risk.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Well, he admits that he hasn't got the numbers, which is ridiculous for him to then pursue this and try to push it forward when he knows he's going to get beaten in any sort of democratic vote of the party on the floor, in the caucus, wherever else. So we can't understand why he's steaming ahead with this. He just seemed hell-bent on destroying his own government.
With local government elections looming, it was no surprise to see 5 councillors turn up to the One protest meeting. A recent development application submitted to Newcastle City Council by German grocer Aldi has churned the stomachs of the Merewether community.
Some of the major issues include the bulk and scale, which is the size of the building, the parking or perhaps lack of parking, the access and big trucks loading and unloading when they go to the supermarket.
The zoning of the Merewether and Llewellyn Street corner site allows for commercial development, but Councillor Helen O'Neill says residents aren't convinced it's the right type.
I suppose people would just like to see it fit in with the community and something perhaps a bit more user-friendly to attract everybody here.
Aldi say it will create around 20 jobs and generate healthy competition at a time of soaring grocery prices, something that's not needed according to resident spokesman Nat Jeffrey.
I don't think there's any real shortage of supermarkets in the area.
The Merewether Forum has put forward a proposal to extend the July 30 public comment deadline. Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
Going 2 race meetings without a win is rare enough for a rider like Robert Thompson, but 3 straight, surely not. With a full book of rides at Newcastle today, most thought it was a sure thing, but the best know there's no such thing. Dressed for success in race 2, it wasn't to be. In fact, his son Simon paraded the winner in that, and with family watching on, it only added to the tension.
I've watched him ride a lot of winners and it never affects me, but today's a bit nerve-wracking.
Parents Arthur and Phyllis proud as punch at the success of their son, who say he was always destined to ride, and no matter what the result today, that's never going to change.
He can ride, as we said, 6 winners out of 6 one day here, and he walked out just the same boy as when he'd walk in not riding a winner.
One would be nice today, though.
One would be beautiful.
But will him on as they might, Thompson failed to salute the judge today. His best was second in race 5, but this family racing love affair simply moves on.
We love him, we're proud of him, and there's another day tomorrow that he's got to go out and do it again.
That's at Scone tomorrow.
The teenager remains in an induced coma and on life support at John Hunter Hospital. His life tonight hanging in the balance. Police say the 18-year-old, identified by neighbours as Josh, was mixing gunpowder with a firework casing at his home in Glendale when the accident occurred last night.
It would appear that he's tried to prepare some sort of homemade explosive device. As he was in the act of preparing that device, it would appear the gunpowder's exploded in his hand.
He suffered serious burns and cuts to his hands, face and chest. Doctors fear his eyesight could also be severely damaged. They're now deciding whether to transfer him to the Sydney Burns unit. Over the past 6 months, police have issued several warnings about the dangers of making bombs following explosions at a martial arts school in Hamilton and at Gregson Park.
We'd like to reinforce our warning to members of the public not to attempt to make these sort of devices, because unfortunately sometimes it can lead to serious injury.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Almost 3,000 people braved the cold in Cessnock, but they had little to cheer about. The Jets' first chance came as Jason Hoffman put Matt Thompson in the clear, but Joe Wheelhouse was unable to finish. A misdirected back pass caught Adelaide keeper Eugene Galkovic off guard, but he recovered in time. Korean import Song did his best to entertain the crowd, but final touches were hurting both sides. Adelaide created several opportunities, but most shots ended up heading for Cessnock's main street. After the break, Song found space, only to be denied by Galkovic's legs. From the corner, Adam Griffith's header was nowhere near the target. The Reds' Brazilian imports combined well, but the final shot was well covered by Ante Kovic. The Jets went searching for a winner, but Joe Wheelhouse's shot turned pass was sprayed wide by Ben Kantarovski. Several yellow cards left Jets coach Gary Van Egmond as frustrated as the fans, as the game finished 0-0. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
it's been called a dog act. Mark Geyer said that today, a dog act. That's a strong description of what he's done.
Well, when we refer to a man like Mark Geyer, who went from Penrith to the Tigers to Perth, and, you know, everybody knows that he was on dope as well, so I don't take much of a comment from a man like that seriously. And for him to refer to Sonny Bill as a dog says a lot about him being the dog that he is.
Well, obviously, this criticism is getting to you. You're feeling it as a friend. You know, Sonny wouldn't know about the criticism. Have you been able to contact him at all?
Well, that's the beauty, that Sonny doesn't even know about the criticism, but I haven't contacted him. I know that Anthony Mundine has spoken to Sonny, and that he said the only regret Sonny had was that he couldn't tell all the fans, all the young kids that really look up to him, the reasons why he had to do what he did. But in time, he'll be able to do that.
These trucks and the goods they're supposed to deliver aren't going anywhere. They're Hunter and Central Coast drivers joining the call to shut down the nation's trucking industry for a fortnight.
We have withdrawn our services as a transport industry. We can no longer cop what the government is trying to force onto us.
That's limiting the hours drivers can work, no more than 12 straight or 14 if they've completed a fatigue management course.
If we happen to overrun those times by a quarter of an hour, they will fine us. They will take points off our licence.
The shift restrictions and skyrocketing diesel prices have left many facing bankruptcy. Some are cutting maintenance costs on their vehicles.
Blokes are forced to work harder to make a bit more money. They're tired, they're not doing the job properly. You'll end up with road accidents, so it's a safety issue.
But drivers haven't taken the decision to stop work lightly. They say losing 2 weeks' pay could cost them everything.
Blokes stand to lose houses, trucks, families. You know, marriage breakdowns occur all the time.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The specific details of the 6-month investigation into the Hunter coal chain by the former Premier remain under wraps, but he has recommended a formal body replace the current Hunter Valley coal chain logistics team, set up 5 years ago to oversee and improve the port's loading capacity. A suggestion welcomed by the Hunter Business Chamber.
They've done a great job. Certainly we welcome the formalisation of that process through the coordinator role, but for us it's all about the outcomes, and we'll be watching closely to see what they are.
Constrained by a lack of infrastructure and facing stiff competition from Queensland, Port Waratah's reputation as the world's largest and most efficient coal handling operator is under threat. How long it will take for the government to act on Mr Greiner's work is anyone's guess.
I think that's a brilliant question. It's a great question for Minister Tripodi, and we'll be very interested in his response.
The need for long-term rail access and expansion of the port's loader were also mentioned. The latter could eventuate if the government accepts a $2.5 billion investment offer from a group of mining companies.
It, like every other proposal, has to go through a proper assessment.
Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
A welfare arm of the Anglican Church, Samaritans helps the needy, and their number is growing by the day. As a charity, it receives tax exemptions.
Any money that we can save on and put back into the community, into our services, is the way that we go.
The tax landscape for non-profit organisations could change as the government looks at whether the concessions are justified. Many charitable groups run commercial operations. They're certain to be targeted under the review.
We run what could technically be construed as a commercial operation. We run recycling shops. It's not an operation that makes us money at this point in time.
Vivian Hales says the review could be beneficial, making the entire industry more accountable. Meanwhile, Samaritans has thanked the community for donating $133,000 to its winter appeal in what's been a tough year.
We had a target of 170,000. We're not, unless we have a fairy godmother turn up in the next few days, probably not going to make that.
They could use a little magic. Demand for some Samaritans services has doubled.
A few years ago, Newcastle City Council was using 35 million litres of town water each year to irrigate its number 1 and 2 sports grounds. That was costing ratepayers $32,000. Now it doesn't use a drop of the town's supply.
Most of the water is supplied from our tanks, and the water from the tanks is supplied from bore water and rainwater. We don't use any town water at all at number 1 or number 2 sports ground.
The council has spent $100,000 on the new high-tech system, which through water savings should pay for itself in 4 years. The pop-up sprinklers are remotely controlled by computer and can be turned on and off by groundkeepers from anywhere with an internet connection. There are plans to use the technology right across Newcastle.
The program can manage 100 sites, and hopefully in the next few years we'll be looking at other sites and parks and sports grounds around council to actually manage the sites the same way. And it's a way that we can reduce the cost to the residents and the community and also be more efficient with our staff.
So it seems there's a little pot of savings at the end of the rainbow. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Well, what we want is to make sure that we've got the investment there to actually create jobs. What we don't want is what we've seen with Mitsubishi and BHP recently, where we're talking about job placement programs.
I've had wonderful support from all owners and trainers for a lot of years, and I'd like to thank all of those very much. Just hope I keep fit and well, and I'm still enjoying me riding and the races, so we're just full steam ahead.
KO. KO. Oh. Oh.
It was vintage Adam McDougall, a 2-try effort against South Sydney coming on the back of his trademark strength. Strongly linked to rugby in either Japan or Europe next season to round out his playing days, there's a few reasons why he didn't do a Sonny Bill and walk out weeks ago.
I wasn't offered $3 million, so if I was offered the $3 million, I wouldn't be standing here right now.
Preferring to concentrate on ending his league days at Newcastle the best way possible, the veteran couldn't help but notice the symbolism in his 2-try effort being matched by that of Akila Uarte, who represents the next crop of talent.
Pretty easy day at the office for the outside backs yesterday, so I hope that he doesn't think first grade is going to be like that every week, because I can assure you it's not that easy.
Chris Bailey remains in hospital meanwhile after a finger he'd previously dislocated got infected and forced his late withdrawal yesterday. While the reason behind Kurt Gidley's uncharacteristically poor day with the boot has also come to light.
His back tightened up in the first half and he spent the whole of half time having treatment.
The week-long trip away is as much about what happens on the training pitch as it is off it, but everyone's keen to see Danish triallist Jasper Hawkinson in action. Also meeting the team in Port Macquarie late today was Mark Burns, who's been trialling with English clubs and is now looking for a deal with the Jets.
He's been in Melbourne playing. He's captain the under-17s and I think the under-20s at national team level. He brings some experience to our team as well.
He's a good young player. He was the under-20s Australian captain. So, hopefully he can bring something to this team and, I'm sure he'll do a job.
Griffith's more concerned about his ankle being right after he required a cortisone shot last week, which kept him sidelined on Saturday night.
I am confident and hopefully, I've had some good advice from local doctors and the physio, so, fingers crossed.
The club definitely is. The 0-0 draw against Adelaide only reinforced their lack of depth up front, and with attention now switching to South America for a marquee-type player, time is of the essence.
Hopefully we'll have some news for you middle of the week coming up, but right at this moment we've got to concentrate on what we've got here and now.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.